Hello and welcome to I Was There, where we have conversations with eyewitnesses to history. I'm Jeff Trujillo, and today I have a very special guest who's going to share her very personal journey. You know, when it comes to history, there's the history we all share globally, and there's the history we go through individually. And in the best of those instances, we sometimes go on to share, inspire, and help others through our trials. Today I'm grateful to be having a conversation, which I consider to be an actual miracle in my own life, with someone I've been close to since we were 14 years old. Valarie Carlomagno's story is one of survival, perseverance, and example. At age 44, she was a devout, lifelong Christian, wife, mother of a 15-year-old high school sophomore, and a successful administrative assistant for a community college vice president. Life was busy and humming along when out of the blue she suddenly experienced a seizure, and within days her life and future took a dramatic turn. Valarie immediately underwent a barrage of tests, and her doctors quickly diagnosed her with a large, cancerous brain tumor. Furthermore, they recommended a dangerous, radically invasive surgery to extract the tumor within days. The impacts of this surgery was unknown, and the tumor that was to be removed was located deep in an area of her brain that potentially controlled personality and speech. Valarie had a decision to make, and she had to make it quickly. And that's where we'll begin her story. Welcome, Valarie, and thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
So we're this is going to be a very personal interview because our background goes way back. We've known each other almost 50 years. Can you believe it? So we met, why don't you tell the audience where we met?
We met in band where I was second chair clarinet and you were the second chair trumpet player.
That's right. That's right. In Mr. Dennis's band class.
Yes.
And so we were both, what grade were we in?
We were in 8th grade.
Yes.
And I sent you a note that says, I like you.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. And so that's where our story began. And so we've known each other since then. And we went on to date through high school on and off and later even get closer. We'll get into that a little bit later.
Yes.
So, okay. But so in school, you were very active and very popular, and I was not. So you helped me out with introducing me to the popular kids and kind of getting me into those circles, and I appreciate that. So tell us a little bit about your activity in high school, and how would you describe your personality?
Well, I was very outgoing
Yeah.
in high school. I was friends with everybody that wanted to be friends with me.
Yeah.
I was on the Blade staff, which was a high school newspaper.
Yeah, you were the typesetter for the Blade. That's
Thank
correct.
you. Thank you very much. I was very popular, but I had to work 3 jobs my senior year. So
yep, you were always a hard worker.
I was pretty much got to the games at 7 o'clock, and I didn't have time to do any activities with the fellow cheerleaders because I was a song leader. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so I got there at 7 and I cheered until I couldn't cheer anymore.
That's right. But the highlight of your high school career was our senior year. There was a big event and you were named
the homecoming queen.
That's right. That's right. So you are our class homecoming queen. And so,
yes.
So that just gives a little bit of background about your personality. You've always been bubbly and outgoing and whatnot. Now, in addition to your personality, you've always been, as long as I've known you, you've been a person of faith.
Yes.
And so talk a little bit about your faith throughout the years.
Well, I tried to be faithful. I was a Christian, and I got baptized at 15 in the Baptist church. Mm-hmm. And so I've been faithful since.
Well, and I would say that your faith always guided you, and it was a very important part of your life and something that you always put forth. And you were very dedicated. You went to church a lot. You went to church activities, throughout your life.
Yeah. I went to church camp at the Baptist church, and we were there for the weekend, and my brother went because he became a Christian his senior year.
Okay.
So anyway, so he went, and it was a very spiritual time in my life.
And you carried that through into your adulthood. And so I remember going to church with you guys at one point. So so
and you and Lisa.
Yes, our friend Lisa as well. So yes, you guys recruited all of us. But so years went by, and we ended up getting married, and we were married for
14 years.
14 years. And we ended up having a son together. And so our son is Jake, and he's the apple of both of our eyes. And what I'm most grateful for through our life is a lot of people go through divorces, and it's always rough no matter what. But we decided early on to remain friends no matter what. And we've been able to do that.
That's been a wonderful experience.
It has been. It's been a huge blessing to me, and hopefully to you. And I think Jake appreciates it. And so we always stayed close. So years went by and you remarried. And so let's get to the incident that we're going to talk about today, which was your health crisis that you ended up having. How old were you when that happened?
I was 44.
You were 44 and you were married. And how old was Jake?
He was 15.
Yes.
So the day began with major stress.
Now, leading up to this time, though, real quick, you had no symptoms. You were totally healthy,
No, I
right?
was very healthy.
Yeah.
I was very healthy. So the day began with major stress. I was working for the vice president of Palomar College. I was working in business. I had to have a degree for that. It was very important that I had a degree. And I had to leave work at 12:30 to serve lunch to the football players. It was an away game.
Jake played football. Jake,
Yeah, he played football.
And so this was during football season.
Yes.
And you were active with the moms on the team, and you were going to, it was kind of a pregame rally that you guys were going to feed them.
Yeah. And so we fed them lunch, the moms and I did. And then I had to go back to work. It was an away game, so we had to leave the field early to make it to the airport, which should have taken 2 hours, but it took 3. And by the time we were airborne, I wanted a glass of wine. And so then 2 hours later, I ordered another glass of wine. And then I had an experience which I didn't know what it was. I could have sworn I didn't have a seizure. So I had an experience where my field of vision was round and then it descended into black.
Okay.
And I decided, I made a conscious decision.
This was on the plane.
Yes, that was on the plane.
And you and Jake were going where?
We were going to Washington, D.C. for Veterans Day.
Okay.
And so this was the day before Veterans Day. So I had this experience where it was round and it was totally black. And then I made a conscious decision beforehand not to pass out on Jake because he was asleep, and I decided, I was in the middle seat, and I decided to pass out on the guy sitting next to me who was awake.
Yeah.
So he yelled for the stewardess, and it was decided that I'd had a stressful day. So backing up just a little bit, my son woke up from his sleep, and he was shaking so badly.
Well, it scared him.
Yeah, it scared him. And anyway, so we decided that it was a stressful day, and I had 2 glasses of wine, and so that's what Jake said. She's had 2 glasses of wine. I know that's the problem.
Yeah. But then you guys went on. So this was the first of 2 episodes that led to your diagnosis, right?
Yes.
So this was episode 1. Out of the blue, you had this episode, but you guys went on.
We had a great time in DC.
Yeah, and you guys did fine, and there was no other episode, right? So then let's talk about the episode that finally led to your diagnosis. And so how much longer was that?
Well, it was a month later.
Okay.
And I was hosting a Christmas party.
It was for work.
It was for work. And I kept saying the word I must have said it 10 times.
Like you got locked on it.
Yeah. It was like, that scared me. It was like, the passing out on the plane didn't scare me because I figured it was a stressful day and I had 2 glasses of wine, etc. But when I kept saying the word I, it was like that scared me, and I went to the urgent care that night.
Yeah. And so you had no control over saying that,
no.
right?
And I was awake when I was saying it, but I just kept saying the word I. So
what was the reaction to everyone when that happened?
Several people noticed, and Bonnie noticed, the vice president, and then the finance director noticed, and I just said, I don't know why I keep saying this word.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
but it was kind of like you had no control over it.
No.
You just kept repeating it.
Yeah.
Okay. You finally got out of that it kind of went away.
Yeah,
right?
it went away, and I was like, that is really weird. I don't know why I keep saying I. So that night I went to the urgent care.
Okay.
So he ordered a sleep study and he ordered an MRI.
Right. I remember you relating that's what happened, but then what happened after you had the tests?
The sleep study was fine. So the MRI was not good because I got a call the next day after the MRI saying that it was abnormal. And so I should come in to Zion, which is in San Diego County. It's about 40 minutes away. Yeah, it's a hospital. It's a Kaiser hospital. And then I had to go in like 2 days later. So.
And what were you told?
I was told that I had a massive tumor on my frontal lobe.
Right. And what was the prognosis for that?
I had to have surgery 2 weeks later.
Yeah, I remember they wanted to do it like right away.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when they told you that you had this brain tumor, they knew it was a brain tumor, right?
Yes.
Okay.
They knew, but I didn't know.
Right.
Yeah.
But they said it was a large mass that had to be removed.
Yes.
Immediately.
Yes.
Oh.
And so I was put on Keppra. And I don't know if you know about Keppra, but it's a powerful, powerful drug. And my friend, Dr. Tom, he said to me, Val, you have to take it. And so I will be forever grateful to Dr. Tom that he said, you have to take the Keppra.
Yeah. So they said you had a decision to make. Really, it wasn't a decision. They said it had to come out, right?
Yeah. Dr. Abdu, who was my brain surgeon, basically, he was my neurologist. He said I had an abnormal left cerebral hemisphere with a left anterior frontal mass that a craniotomy would be scheduled for February 4th.
And so what was going through literally your head when that was said?
Well, I was at peace because I knew that I would be going back to work in like a month or two. I felt a real peace about it. And so I knew that I would be well.
Just through your faith?
I don't know that it was through my faith, but I just knew I'd be well.
Did they tell you there were going to be any risks involved?
Yeah, they told me all the risks and stuff like that, but
what were the risks?
You could die.
Yeah.
First of all.
Yeah.
They never said that I couldn't speak or anything like that.
So what was your decision making like? You weren't scared, but what did you think?
Well, I knew I had to have it removed. And I didn't think it was cancer. Yeah. So I was sure it wasn't cancer.
Well, what I remember was I was shocked when you called to tell me that that was what was happening. But I remember you wanted it out right away. Like you just said, I want it out. Like, let's schedule it as soon as possible. I want it out. Yeah. And I remember thinking about how brave you were and how with the risks that were involved, because I remember you told me some of the risks and they were potentially pretty bad. And, you know, we had Jake and, you know, our son, he was middle
And he
of
was
football
involved
season.
in wrestling at the time.
That's right. He was transitioning from football to wrestling and he was active. But you marched forward like, let's do it.
Yeah. And that's what I did. And I felt like it was going to be healthy.
Okay.
And I think my faith played into it. And I just said, well, I'm going to be off work for a month or two, but that's okay. That's okay.
Well, so let's move forward to the surgery then. The surgery day came. That was a special day. So, talk about what happened that day.
Well, there were, I think, 12 people at the hospital.
Family and friends.
Family and friends. And then I remember dressing in a purple gown with matching purple socks. I don't know why it was purple. So I just remember feeling at peace. I felt like that God would guide the surgeon's hands, that they would know what they were doing. And I just felt a real peace about it.
It was a very stressful day. So I was one of the 12 that was there. Jake and I went. Your family was there. A lot of our close friends.
My dad was there.
Your dad was there.
His wife, Louise.
Your mom and your
my
stepdad.
mom and Dale.
Yeah.
And my sister was there.
So you had to basically get your affairs in order because anticipating that although you thought it was going to go well, the worst could happen.
Yeah. I thought it was going to go great.
Yeah. So
Needless to say.
yeah. Okay. So you have the surgery. What are your memories of the surgery?
Well, I remember waking up and thinking, I have a tube coming from my head which has blood in it, and can I handle this emotionally? And so I think I'm going to check out for a while. So that was my first memory after waking up.
Yeah. So on the other end of that was my memories of that day was your surgery was long. How long? It ended up being
6
longer,
hours.
longer than they thought.
Yeah, it was an hour longer than they thought.
Yeah.
I don't know what that was about. Obviously, they had to cross the midline, which is the center of your forehead, and they had to move to the right side, like an inch or so. So I remember having that thought, and then I fell asleep. And then I think I had a stroke.
Yeah. So from an observer's point of view, we were all there. Your husband Pete was there, along with your family, friends. The surgery went longer than it had been expected, and we all started to get very worried. They came out, told us that a very large tumor had been removed. I think larger than they had even anticipated.
Yeah.
The weirdest moment was they brought you out on a gurney and and you were obviously unconscious, and you had a scar where they had gone in on your head, and they did a parade where they wheeled you past everybody, and everybody came up and stared at you, which was really bizarre to me. And I emotionally,
imagine the germs that were there.
yeah, emotionally, it wrecked me seeing you that way, and yeah, that was it was kind of a reality check that this had really happened, and so and obviously Jake was there, and he was very upset. I mean, as a 15-year-old would be,
Yeah.
and so that started kind of a spiral of things that played out over the next year, that things didn't go so well.
Well, that's saying something.
And so why don't you talk a little bit about some of the side effects that you experienced as a result of the surgery?
Well, I had a reflexive grip on the blankets. Nobody could pull them out. I couldn't move my right side at all. That lasted about, I would say, 5 days. And so I wasn't able to speak. Nobody knew what I was understanding. I was completely normal inside, but I couldn't respond. And so I would say yes when I meant no, and no when I meant yes. And it was so frustrating to me because I knew what I wanted to say, but I had expressive aphasia, which means poor word choices. It meant saying the wrong things when we're talking about something. And basically, I could not speak.
Right.
So,
Yeah, you didn't speak for at least a week or two at all. I don't even remember the yes and no for the first week or two.
yeah.
And then in general, you didn't speak for 3 months, maybe?
I would say that I wasn't speaking at 3 months. So I could answer yes or no. I was able to do 3 words. That lasted about a year. I cussed at the dog a lot.
Yeah.
And I was very angry because I couldn't speak.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, not only could you not speak, you couldn't walk for a while too.
Yeah.
It took you, I mean, a month, 2 months
Yeah.
till you could walk?
Took me a month to walk semi-normally.
Slowly.
Yeah, I would say slowly.
You basically had to learn how to walk and talk all over again.
So we're going forward 2 weeks. I was just out of the hospital for a day, and then I had to go see Dr. Abdu again. And then he said to my mom and me, he said, your daughter's file cabinets have been emptied out from her brain, and she has to learn how to put it all together again.
Yeah, I remember them saying that. I remember it was a very frustrating time and scary time for all of us because they didn't anticipate you having the side effects that you had.
Yeah.
And so we would ask, why isn't she talking? And they would say, we don't know. And we'd say, why can't she walk? And they'd say, we don't know. And we'd say, when will she be able to? And they'd say, we don't know. And we'd say, when will she be able to? And they'd say, we don't know. So in the end, Dr. Abdu did an amazing, incredible job. But at the time, it was a year of being terrified. Not only that, what type of tumor did it end up being?
It's oligodendroglioma, which is stage 2 cancer.
And it's a kind of tumor that...
If it goes to glioblastoma,
if it goes to that.
Yes. And it's number 2, and it could go to glioblastoma. I hope it doesn't. So.
Yeah. Well, and so the prognosis for that kind of tumor, though, is what?
11 years.
11 years is the average that somebody survives that tumor.
Yeah. Okay. And I've lived for 15.
So far?
Yes.
You've done awesome.
And I thank God every day that I wake up that He allowed me the opportunity to face the day, and I just thank God for Him.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah,
I do too. So the journey back from that surgery, I mean, to walk, to talk, you had your driver's license taken away.
Yeah,
that was a big one. I remember when they took the tumor out. The prognosis wasn't great that you had that removed, and then you had these side effects that wasn't anticipated, and that's why you think you had a stroke, right?
Yeah.
I believe you did too, because that went downhill really quickly, and they never admitted that you had a stroke. But
and they can't, because that area was cut out.
Yeah.
So they don't know if I had a stroke or not.
Right.
Yeah.
When they cut that area out, the reason you lost your speech and the reason you lost your motor skills was because
of the executive functions.
It removed
that. So I had to relearn that brain-wise. The neurons had to reconnect in a different spot. And I had to learn the executive functions again.
Right.
So
it was a team effort getting you back on your feet. I mean, you had your husband Pete, you had your mom, you had your sister, I remember your mom calling me and asking me if I could take a shift. We would go down. The biggest setback you had was it 2 weeks after your surgery? You ended up back in the hospital, or was it the same week?
It was 6 days that I was in the hospital, and then I was watching 24 and enjoying it. And then I had a seizure in the bathroom.
That's right.
Yeah. So.
And you ended up back in the hospital.
Yes.
But you still couldn't talk and couldn't walk. And the frustrating thing to us and scary was we didn't know if you were understanding what was going on. Because now to you inside, you said it seemed normal and you were at peace.
Yeah.
But to us, we had no idea if what was going on, if it was registering.
Well,
because you didn't really react to anything. You were just kind of conscious, but not really reacting to prompts so much.
So on the second day after my surgery, my blood pressure was 60/30. And my sister was praying and speaking to the Lord and stuff like that. But I realized that I didn't believe in God, Jesus, or the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, so that was the other thing that your surgery removed. I remember you saying later that your surgery pretty much removed your faith.
Yes, and it did. And in the book on Gabby Giffords, the Arizona congresswoman that was shot in the head, 6 people were killed and 12 were injured. Mark Kelly, her husband, said the same thing. He didn't say, because she was Jewish, and he said he didn't say whether or not she believed or didn't believe, but I don't think she believed, because I think that area where she was shot in the left side of the head too. That area, when they cut out my faith. And I just had to learn it took a couple years actually. So I knew I should be going to church. So we went to several churches, and that's when I discovered Coastline.
Right.
So.
But for a time there, you had no faith.
Yes.
Did you think you were going to die at that point?
No, I never thought I was going to die.
Never.
No.
And so did. Yeah. Well, that's good. But you didn't have any concept of God or anything?
And I felt very at peace about it, but I knew I should be having faith. So.
You remembered having faith.
I remember having faith before my surgery, but it took a couple years until I had faith again.
Okay. But you said you had a lot of people praying for you during this time, though.
Yeah.
Both close and at home and afar. I mean, your brother lives afar, and I know he was praying. You had people praying all over the world for you, right?
Yeah. In South Africa, your friend Ron, he had people praying in South Africa for me.
Yeah.
So.
I know you had a lot of people praying for you during that time. But you almost died in the hospital, right? That was
Day 2.
Day 2. Your blood pressure crashed.
Yeah, I was 60 over 30.
And I remember them saying that you might not make it. In fact, one of the most sobering times for me was I remember our friend since high school, Dr. Tom, told me to prepare for the worst. And so that was upsetting. The other difficult time that I remember was after seeing you in the hospital, one of those during that first week, and you weren't doing well. Our 15-year-old son, Jake, said, is mom gonna die? And I remember saying, I don't know. And so that, to me, that was the low point. That was the scariest point because, we weren't married anymore, but you were still, you're one of my best friends. I mean, closer than a best friend, but just you're one of my best friends and you're the mother of my son. And I just felt for him because, he was imagining a life without mom, and we didn't know. And Tom also said, she may not come out of this. So, it was a hard time, and I think everybody was praying for you a lot during that time. But you were at peace through that time. Yeah,
I was very at peace. So bright light affected me. So I had to cover my face and only leave a hole for my mouth to breathe in because bright light bugged me, and it bugged me for a long time actually. So yeah.
Well, and so the first ray of hope that I think I had was on one of my shifts when you ended up in the hospital.
I went back into the hospital.
You went back into the hospital. It was really loud in there, and you were trying to sleep. And this was, to me, a miracle. You were trying to sleep, and it was really loud. And I said, is the noise bothering you? And you nodded. And I said, do you want to hear some music? And you nodded yes. And so I put some headphones on you, and I think I played the Beatles.
You played Elton John.
Oh, I played Elton John. Okay. And you were laying there with your eyes closed, and I looked over, and you were mouthing the words.
Yes.
You weren't saying them, but you were mouthing them.
Yes.
And I thought, oh, she can speak. As far as you couldn't speak, but you were mouthing the words. So I thought, well, the language is there. It's just deep in there somewhere.
It's a different part of the brain rather than the frontal lobe. And I could sing. I remember singing very softly, but I remember singing to Elton John.
So then we made it kind of a game, and we would play music. I remember singing Gilligan's Island
yes.
with you. And so slowly you started to actually speak the words as you would sing. Yeah, well, actually sing the words.
No, I was able to sing.
Yes.
I was able to sing, but I wasn't able to speak.
Right.
It was the weirdest thing.
It was weird. Yeah, that was very strange that you were able to sing, but you could, which to me was encouraging because
I'm a horrible singer, by the way.
Yeah, but I figured if you could sing, you can speak. You'll eventually speak, and so that kind of gave us hope. And so you ended up going to speech therapy. physical therapy.
At Sharp Rehab.
Yeah, you did a lot.
So the thing I remember the most, I remember crying. And I was a very one-dimensional person while I was there. Very, like, I couldn't speak. And so I was just, I remember crying a lot. In fact, I would cry during speech therapy. I cried in rehab. I cried everywhere I went because I wasn't able to speak.
Right.
And that was upsetting.
Right.
So.
Yeah, no, it was rough. And people didn't understand we would be with you in public. And even as your speech came back, you would speak slowly or you would stutter quite a bit.
Yeah, and I stuttered big time, like the first 10 years.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
And people didn't understand because you looked normal.
Yes.
Your scar is in your hairline.
Yeah.
So it's covered.
Yeah.
Which it was a pretty big scar.
Yeah,
but
you can see it now.
Yeah. But you looked, as you would say, normal.
Yeah.
But you had a hard time speaking. And
I would say things like the sky is brown.
Yeah, I remember one of the first times they said take her out and take her in public and have her start doing things. And we went to get dog food. And I said, "Okay, take us to the dog food." And you walked to the cat food.
Okay.
And
that's because I had a cat at the time.
Well, no, but you got upset because we said, "Let's find the dog food." And you found the cat food, but you couldn't find the dog food.
Oh.
So it took a long time. I mean, your license, I remember when you got your license back finally, I mean, moving forward, and the most inspirational, why I wanted to share this history was because, people undergo a lot of medical challenges, and this one was a devastating one. But your story, to me, really was a miracle. And it still is. And it's very inspirational, I think, can be inspirational to a lot of people. I think it has been to those who know it.
Yeah.
And I wanted other people to know it, that, when you're facing something this devastating and it can get really bad, there's still hope. And in your case,
exactly.
The miracle was your faith slowly started coming back as well.
Well, I'm going to say that in Hebrews 1:11, now faith is being sure of what we hope for and certain of what we do not see. So just like the air I breathe, I can't see it, but I know it's there. And then Matthew 17:20, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to the mountain, move from there, and it will move. Nothing will be impossible for you. And so I live by faith, and I think that's how you should live, because the Lord said, you have faith as small as a mustard seed. It's like you have faith. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like I have faith the size of Mount Kilimanjaro, and then sometimes as small as a mustard seed. But I feel like I have faith now.
Yeah.
So
it returned.
Yeah, it returned.
Well, and your example has spurred on our son to become a Christian.
Yeah, he was
at the time he was pretty anti-faith. I myself have always had faith. I wasn't always very strong with it. I'm still extremely imperfect, but it definitely...
None of us are perfect.
It definitely strengthened my faith. And in my own life, I mean, I consider it a miracle. What I saw you go through and to be able to come back to where you are, to me, that was a miracle.
Yeah.
I've been listening to this podcast the last year to try to get through the Bible. I never read the Bible cover to cover.
Okay.
But I'm now listening to the Bible cover to cover, and I'm just about done with it. But the story, to me, the story that really hit me was the story of David. And David fighting Goliath. And to me, as I listen to the scripture of that story, it reminds me of what you faced with the challenge that was sent upon you. So,
and I do feel like it's a miracle that I've survived. My oncologist, who recently, she retired about 2 years ago, she said to me on our last phone call, "You are a real miracle." She said, "I only know of 2 other people that have had your situation, and you are a real miracle. And I'm so glad that we didn't treat your cancer, because that would have been the end for you. And she said, I'm just so grateful that we didn't treat your cancer.
Yeah, so the treatment that you were facing afterwards, I remember when they showed us the x-ray of what they took out, I was shocked because it left a huge open
Yeah.
space in your brain. And I remember thinking, like, how can she survive this?
Yeah.
And but you have. And then the treatment is almost
Chemotherapy
as,
and radiation.
The treatment's as bad as the disease almost.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't survive it.
Yeah.
And so together you worked with her. That was a miracle. She was one of the best in the business. And you guys developed a plan. And
Well, she wanted to treat me at one point. And then I said, let's go through the next MRI and then we'll decide. And then 3 months later, I had it and there was no growth. So
you had to go to appointments, every 3 months in the beginning, right?
At 3 times a year.
4 months, yeah.
And then it was twice a year. And the last 4 years, it's been once a year. So I only have to go once a year. I'll have my MRI in November, and then December I'll find out how it looks, if there's any regrowth. And so for 15 years there hasn't been any regrowth. So I'm grateful.
Yeah. I know this has been a big cloud that's followed you for 15 years. I mean, it's always been scary every time.
I only get nervous when it's time for the MRI.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, and now I don't even get nervous anymore. It's just something that I have to do. It's like I've had like 35 MRIs, and I've had some MRIs that are longer. They take an hour, and that's when she was really worried about it, but no regrowth. So I'm just grateful.
Well, praise God for now. And I'm just so grateful of the time that you've been given and continue to get, and we'll just keep praying as we go.
Yeah.
I wanted to mention your brother not too long ago, I think it was on your birthday, he was wishing you birthday wishes, or maybe it was sister wishes or something, but he described you as having a servant's heart. And to me, the second part of the miracle that came was during your recovery. Through your recovery, you've been able to help so many people by some of the things that unfortunately you weren't able to go back to work.
No, I was not. They held the job for me for a year, and I wasn't speaking. I could only say 3 words. And so they had to drop me from the job. And I lost my license, and I had to take the bus everywhere. It was a heck of a year.
It was.
I'm going to say that. But I never lost my sense of humor. I never lost my ability to think in the past. I do have some short-term memory loss, and I'm taking this medicine, this brain supplement, that's helping me dream again. I've been dreaming for about a year. So I would say in the past 15 years, I've maybe had 3 dozen dreams.
Oh, wow. So you lost your ability to dream then too. Oh,
and I lost my ability to dream. And I just wanted to have that back. So I take this brain supplement. It's very, very helpful. I've been taking that for about a year and a half now. It's helped me to dream.
Well, that's good.
And I just thank God every day that I'm awake.
So where I was going was, your brother described you as having a servant's heart. And so in the middle of your recovery, you decided with this, you couldn't work. I think you were looking for purpose.
Yes.
And so you started volunteering with a local organization that raises assistance dogs, right?
Yes.
And what is the name of the organization?
It's Canine Companions for Independence.
Yeah. And so you took on a puppy. And
I took it on. She was 8 weeks old when I got her. That was Janny. And she was a wonderful dog. And we rehabbed together, basically.
Yeah.
So I would say I took her for walks, and I was walking, and she was walking, and we were both rehabbing. She was learning, I was rehabbing. So that was a great organization.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what's the percentage that dogs graduate from that program and actually become assistance dogs?
25%.
Yeah. So only a quarter of the dogs that go through their program and are paired up with a volunteer trainer graduate. Well, you and Janny worked so closely during that time. and Janny actually graduated.
Yes.
And so the way the program works is you raise the dog for 18 months, right?
No, I raised Janny for 18 months. I raised Ina for 15 months.
Okay. But you're given the dog. The dog's 6 months old, right?
No, the dog is 8 weeks old.
Oh, 8 weeks old.
Yes.
Okay. And then you're given the dog, and then you raise the dog for 18
You
months.
socialize. You socialize the dog, and you give them commands, and they...
Yeah, you take them to classes, and you teach them...
Take them twice a month to class.
Yeah, and you teach them how to walk and heel and do all the commands.
Yeah.
Then the dog goes into a program.
Matriculation.
Matriculation. And then if the dog passes that, they're paired with somebody who has a special need, and then they go on to assist that person. And so you have to give up the dog.
Yes.
And
it's very hard.
yeah. So it's a great organization. But what makes it easier though is when you see the people it goes to.
Exactly.
You're really doing something miraculous for that person.
Yeah.
So Janny, you had Janny for 18 months, and then you gave her up. She graduated.
And so she was in training for an additional 6 months.
Because she was super special.
Yes. She's with a deaf woman.
Yes.
Yes.
So she was given to a deaf lady who was
the principal of a deaf school. She learned sign language before she went deaf. So she knew the sign language.
Right.
And so that is a miracle in and of itself. So
yeah. And so this deaf school, Janny went on to basically become the mascot.
The mascot, yes.
At this deaf school in New York, right?
Yes.
And so Janny actually ended up helping hundreds of kids as a result of you training her in the beginning. And so not only did Janny help you, you helped Janny. Janny helps hundreds of kids, as well as her new owner. And now Janny's retired, right?
And Jane, her owner, said she's on heart medication.
Uh-oh.
And she got valley fever.
Oh, no.
This has been a couple years ago. And she's still doing great.
Good.
They said that they give her shots every 3 months to help with the arthritis. Mm-hmm. But she's doing great. So
that's awesome. Jenny was a great dog. So then I used to videotape these graduations, and most people they would get up there and say, "This is the first dog this person's graduated out of 10 dogs," or something like that, because only 25% graduate. And then there was a lot. They'd say, "This is the 6th dog that this person has had, and the 2nd dog they've graduated," or whatever.
Okay, yeah.
You ended up getting another dog immediately after that.
No, it was a couple. 3 years later.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, but your second dog was
Ina the second.
Ina the second.
She was a great dog, but I didn't think she'd pass either.
No,
I didn't
was
think
rambunctious.
Janny would pass, and I didn't think Ina would pass. But she passed. She was matriculated, and she's with a boy who has MS.
Yeah, on a farm, right?
Yeah,
somewhere?
on a farm in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Ina went on to change that boy's life.
Well, and he had a sister she suffered from seizures, and she was older than he was. She was 16, and then he helped her as well because she had to learn how to help this girl and her brother. So
that's amazing. And so your servant's heart, you went on to help all these kids through your volunteerism with the dog. Although you don't work anymore, you immediately dove into volunteerism. You volunteer for the Morongo
Basin Historical Museum. And I'm a director because my great-great-grandfather built Warren's Well in Yucca Valley. And then I belong to the Eagles Auxiliary. I'm chaplain. And then I teach Sunday school at church. And
so all of this kind of comes back to your servant's heart, your faith, and just the mere fact that although you were knocked down and almost out, you've rallied back and you've been able to help others through your experience.
Yes.
And so what do you say to people who are facing health issues or something, as devastating?
It's all about attitude. Mm-hmm. If you have a good attitude, your chances will be increased. And I'm not saying that about all people, because some people have a good attitude and they die. Mm-hmm. And I'm just saying attitude is everything. If you have a good attitude, you can live longer. You can be strong. you can be who you want to be, but you just have to have faith and hope and love. And that's the key ingredients for a happy life and a successful life. And I stopped working when I was 44. Now I'm 60. And it's been hard. I still have aphasia occasionally at night. I particularly have it where I say things that are not relevant to the point, etc. But I work past that and I wake up in the morning and it's a new day, and then I'm just very thankful. So
Yeah. And so what do you say to God when you pray now? And what do you think about the journey you've been on? And
I was a prayer before the surgery, but since the surgery, I thank God when I wake up. I thank him for this day that I didn't deserve. And I pray like during the day, like for people and stuff like that. But my prayers are considerably shorter now. Anyways, I think I pray for the right reasons. So,
well, I think any reason's the right reason,
Yeah.
but I think you have an especially good reason to pray. And
Yeah.
well, I pray too. And I also thank God for you and the example that you've been in my life, and for his grace in letting you survive and come back from where you were. It was devastating to watch you go through that, but it was also inspiring to watch you come back. Not only to me, but I also am grateful that our son was able to see that. He's living a life of service right now, and I think it helped to show him that God has grace, and that you can rebound, and that there were so many lessons in watching you go through what you went through, I think, to a lot of people. And I'm hoping by sharing this story that it'll give more people encouragement that, when things are bad and look really bad, just there's still hope.
Yes, and I agree. And there's a question that you wrote down. What happened in a diner?
Oh, so you said you don't remember the incident, but right
No.
after it was your surgery, and it was a while after your surgery, and we went to a diner, and it was really hard because the guy who was waiting us, I think he owned the diner or something, you were ordering and you stuttered, and he mocked you, and he started, and I remember being so mad that he did that, and you got really upset because I think it embarrassed you. And I was so mad I didn't even say anything, because he was an older guy and I should have said something, but I was more concerned about you, and you got really upset. And it showed me the intolerance that a lot of folks have. I don't think he knew, well, he obviously didn't know what you had been through, and that you had this affliction.
Yeah.
And, but it was really insensitive, and it really pissed me off.
Well, where was it at?
It was Cafe 101 in Oceanside.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's a plug for them. So, anyway, whoever you are, dude, be more sensitive next time. But anyway, well, before we go, this is a history podcast, and
Okay.
there's one little bit of history that we both experienced, and it's a fun story, so we'll end on a fun note.
Okay.
This has been a fun note. Your story is actually a really good story, but this fun note. So when I was in college, I worked at a recording studio.
Yes, Lion's Share.
Lion Share Recording Studios. And we would have A-list celebrities come in there, music celebrities. And one night you were coming to visit me, and you had your old car, and you drove all the way to Hollywood, and there was no cell phones then.
Yes.
But you overheated on the way there. And I remember we had these security cameras, and I'd been doing my rounds. I was a security guard. And I did my rounds, and I came back, and I looked at the camera, and I saw your car out there with the hood up, and I saw a guy hosing down your radiator. And I thought, oh man, she overheated. And it was nighttime. And as I walked out there, do you remember who you were standing next to?
I didn't know this,
Yes.
but it was Quincy Jones.
Yeah. So one of the greatest.
I thought he just worked there.
I know. So one of the greatest producers in music history is sitting there hosing down your radiator. And I remember as I'm walking toward you, I thought, oh my God, that's Quincy Jones. And I remember walking up to him and going, thank you, sir. I got it. And he was the nicest guy.
He was so nice. And he was recording Michael Jackson at the time.
Yes.
It's like We Are the World.
Yes.
And he was such a nice guy. And he left. He went back into the studio.
Yeah, I took the hose from him.
Yes. And you said to me, do you know who that is? And I said, no, I don't.
Yeah.
And he's like, that's Quincy Jones. And I'm like, who is Quincy Jones?
Yeah. And I said, We Are the World. So anyway, that was a brush with greatness that was a little bit of history that we both lived through. That was kind of fun. It was probably my best lion's share story. So anyway, with that, I guess I'll wrap it up with that. Thank you for telling your story and allowing me to share your story with
Well, you're very
everyone.
welcome.
Is there anything else you want to add before we go? Is there anything you want folks to know? Or
I want to thank you for listening to this podcast. And if just one person can deal positively with adversity, it will be worth it to me. So I just want to thank you, Jeff, for hosting this podcast. And God bless you all. And I wish you continuing faith in our Lord Jesus Christ.
Well, it's a great message, and it's a message that I know has inspired me and inspired so many others. So thank you, and thank you for everything that you've done. And to our audience, thank you for letting us tell this story. I know sometimes personal stories can be boring. I don't think this one's been boring at all. I think this one, to me, it's a miracle. And when I run into folks who say, there's no such thing as miracles, and I'm like, yeah, there is.
Yes.
I've actually seen one.
I'm a walking miracle.
You are a walking miracle. Thank you for telling your story. And to our audience, again, thank you for joining us. And I hope you enjoyed Valarie's story. And if you want to reach out to us, you can find us on Facebook at the I Was There Podcast. You can email us at the I Was There Podcast at gmail.com. Until next time, we will see you later. Thank you, Valarie.
Thank you.